Tom, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Yourself?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for joining me. I'm excited to be here today with Tom Berry, managing partner of GHJ out of California. Tom, how's busy season this year so far?
It's going well. The IRS hasn't moved the filing deadlines yet, so that's always a good start to the year, to the filing season. But yeah, it's going good. I was actually talking with one of my compatriots here, and I'm going to say that 2024 is really the first year in since COVID that we're actually able to start the year like clean. Not, we're not running from behind. Not a lot of work floating over from last year, which we've had the last few years, and I think most importantly, we have the right team organized. So, which has been in the great resignation and talent challenges in the profession is a newfangled reality. We'll see how long it lasts, but it's good for
Yeah.
today.
Well, that's wonderful. So Tom and I have gotten to know each other over the last probably 4 or 5 years now as one of the inaugural participants in our managing partner bootcamp program that Gary obviously kicked off the ground. And Tom, you've just been so involved over the last 5 years as part of our community. Love to hear a little bit about your experience and what that's been like from the first cohort you actually participated in to what it's kind of evolved into with 140 alumni, 5 continents.
Yeah.
Just understanding as you've taken, reins of a firm that's evolved quite progressively going forward.
Yeah, no, look, I look back and heck, I think it's been 8 years maybe since that inaugural class. Is it eight, nine,
About
somewhere in
seven
that
years,
range?
yeah.
7 years. Okay, there you go. So it is. There's been a lot that's happened personally and professionally for me in that 7 years. And when I look back at what I took over for a gentleman named Leon Jenks, and he had been the managing partner at the firm for quite a number of years, and had really set me up for success as a managing partner. But as he had once said to me, I only know what I knew. I don't know what's coming up. And I think actually uh, going through that boot camp really allowed me to get set up for, I think, for what was to come. And most importantly to me, and obviously Gary and all the different faculty that were in there, they know everything inside and out and are great thought leaders and all this. But also it was having the peers there, having people that were, you know, walking down the same path as I was and being able to share things and concerns and different types of firms. There were some smaller firms than ours, there were some much bigger firms than ours, but we all have the same issues. And I think being able to share those, and even to this day, there's still a couple folks from my cohort that I still stay pretty well connected with that are just really a great asset for me and help me be a better leader and keep my thumb, if you will, on the industry. As it has evolved wildly through the years. So it was a really good experience for me.
Think where you guys were at GHJ 7 years ago in terms of headcount and people to where you are today. I know you guys have just
Oh
grown
yeah.
significantly along that timeline.
I mean, we were less than half the size
Yeah.
than that we are now, and so we've over doubled, and growth, dispersed workforce, pandemic, all kinds of stuff happened in that window of time. I missed the pandemic chapter of that class. I guess I was out that day, but
Well, the
yeah,
pandemic
no.
chapter was an 18-month cohort that kind of evolved a little bit in that, like everybody else was at that given time. But
Yeah, no, but there needs to be. I don't know. Hopefully, there's not going to be. There probably needed to be a class on the pandemic, but I don't think anyone would have known what to teach,
well,
because the lesson on the pandemic was we all tightened up and then it took off, right? So
yeah,
it was a rocket ship for the profession
yeah.
pretty quickly after the pandemic hit.
Well, no question about that. Before we dive into a topic I'm really excited to kind of covering today around staying independent, we talked about the
Hmm.
pandemic. You guys really have this brand around, and I call it hashtag be more, and really being a people first oriented culture and,
Yep.
really instilling that as part of who GHJ is. Maybe you could talk just a little bit about how that's kind of defined you as an organization, as a firm, both internally to your professionals, but also externally to your clients.
Yeah, no, for sure. And even pre-pandemic, and we as a firm were oriented around balance in life is what I'll use, and the hashtag be more is an understanding that there's multiple aspects to our lives, and we centered around three aspects: family, self, and firm, right? So I've been around in the profession for more than a minute, but still have a while to go, hopefully. But when I first joined, I would say the kind of more the partners at that point in time, their career was all about the firm. It was all about work, 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 right? And I think that was the profession's mindset. At some point in time, I think families started to bleed into that mindset a bit, in the sense that, like, I can remember starting off, 25 years ago, where there was a partner who would leave early on Saturday because he went to, one of his kids' baseball games or something like that. And, it was celebrated, but all in our firm for certain. But I'm thinking back about, like, it was a big deal, and how ridiculous the sense of that would be a big deal now, as we all conduct business from the baseball diamond these days. Um, but I think that evolved, and we as a firm were very centered on how we can all spend time with our families and grow that element, while still having career and growing with the firm. And then along with that, and I always people always ask me where it came from. I think some of it was just some of my growing up about balance in life, and what was taught, but the self part of things. And I think also, when we look at the profession, taking care of yourself was not always at the top of the list of things to worry about in the profession, right? We work long hours, may not have been penned as the healthiest group in the world. But I think, highlighting that a little bit, it was generational. A lot of it was, I think, just as the world evolved, that the understanding that we need to take care of all aspects of our lives. So paying attention to your physical health, your mental health, spiritual health, whatever it is for you, and having your health being selfish, if you will, um, balancing that with your commitments to your family and your commitments to your profession and your firm. I think to be successful in any one of them, you got to be successful in all of them. So that's our Be More concept. And we were, it's not as unique today as I think it was when we rolled it out 8 or 10 years ago. But we've been doing it for quite some time, and it still drives what we do today in regard to flex working and hybrid dispersed workforces, and how we really approach the day. So it's who we are.
Well, I think, and that's a great transition to just kind of starting to think about, staying independent. And, with all this consolidation and activity and the rapid growth over the last 3-4 years with the pandemic and the profession in general, a lot of times that whole staying independent conversation isn't part of it. And when you and I started chatting about a week ago on this, about today's, podcast, it was, well, we've been talking about this at length. At least we know we're going to be thriving independently for the next 2 years. Now, after that, it may change. And so when Gary and I kind of put this program together, we've identified 10 different areas, a part of what it takes to stay independent. And the first 3 are what we see as most critical, because the other 7 wouldn't matter if you don't have strong leadership, you don't have strong succession, right? With the right bench and players. And then, finally, and probably the most important or difficult conversation at times is partner alignment. And so when we started talking a little bit about that, I know you guys have a very clear, focus right now for at least the next 2 years. I'd love to talk a little bit more about how you guys arrived at that,
Sure.
determination, and some of those initiatives that are core to, being able to remain independent for the next 2 years and after that.
Yeah. And so I think the first 3 things that you mentioned there, leadership, succession, and alignment, we've checked those boxes. We've always been checking those boxes, and I think that's part of who we do. So, of who we are. So that wasn't even a challenge for us, right? It was the next thing. And as you say, the strategy for the next couple of years, we have a strategy 2027. I guess it's 3 years, but it's focused around R5, but that doesn't mean it's binary. It's kind of like the world changes so much. What do we got to do today to get to the next 3 years, to then figure out 3 years from now how we get to? We used to do 5-year vision plans and all this stuff. The world is way too fast to really
And
think
3
5
years
years
is
ahead.
still sometimes aggressive at this point in life. I mean,
It is. It is. So, but when we looked at this, so we have all those things, 3 things that you mentioned. I think some of the other stuff is that we think we have a great culture, and our culture is different. And so, how do we maintain that culture? Secondarily, I think we're all having fun. And then I think when you look at the entrepreneurial opportunities that we have, is really what gets us, a lot of us, out of bed in the morning, the build of all of this. So those are things that were driving us towards there. But fundamentally, we talked about Be More, but when you look at our why statement on why we show up every day as an organization, it's to help our people and our clients pursue professional and personal professional objectives and goals. And doing that, in order to go to that promise, we need to we need to build it ourselves. And I think that, yeah, there's going to be other firms out there that kind of tell us that, oh, you can still do that when you're coming in. But we have enough going on that we still think we can hold on to it ourselves and do it our way. Um, and so that's why we're doing it, because we think we're having a good time. We see the opportunity that drives towards our why. But we did have to have, a year ago, we had a partner retreat, and I've shared this story with the whole firm. It's like we sat down and we're like, hey, look, 2023 was we worked a lot, right? We were tired, really running at 3 years running from COVID forward. We were working hard. We were tired. We had a lot going on. I think, in the profession, and it was true to us, we're all making more money than we had ever made before. And that's not just the partners, that's everyone in the firm. So, if you were measured that way, it was all good, but we were tired. And so we had a real pause and said, hey, look, so we have options here. And as a firm, what are the best options for us to drive towards our vision and keep our why? And we thought it was to be independent, and that's easy to say, but we really need to sit down and be like, what is it actually going to take to do this? Because if we don't go forward with intention, we're not going to be able to stay independent, because if we didn't have a plan, we're going to wake up one day and go, oh man, we don't have any leadership or succession or alignment on where we're going to go.
And I think intentionality is such a key part to that phrase there.
Yeah, no, exactly. So we spent the better part of 6 months from that November partner retreat really getting ourselves aligned in a strategy 2027, which is kind of the subtitle of that is RFI, remaining fiercely independent. That's what we've used. And to do it, we broke it, and this way we approach our strategy. We break it into 4 categories: clients, markets, people, and firm. Like, what do we got to do in those 4 areas? And without going through all the details, it's like, from a client perspective, the world's changed. What do we got to do to increase our service baseline, right? What do we got to do in regard to profiling and bringing in new clients? We've grown, right? So in our growth, we've had bigger clients join our ranks. They want more services. What does that mean, right? And then also, with all the technology out there, how can we enhance client delivery? I always talk, I'm a Marriott loyalist, and I can do absolutely every single thing I ever want to do in regard to Marriott off my phone, including open the door to my room, right? Now, I don't know if that's what we'll ever be able to do as a CPA firm. And as you're aware, there's a lot of quilt work solutions to get there, but I don't think anyone's put patchwork, no one's put the quilt together. But that's kind of a little bit of our beacon where we want to go to what great would look like. So that's the client side. On the markets, when we look at it, as we mentioned, we've had a lot of growth. We're headquartered here in Los Angeles in Southern California, a highly competitive talent market, a highly expensive place for people to live with the cost of living. And before COVID, we started to hire people out of our market hub that were, at the time, we used the term, remote workers. And when COVID came, we put our foot on the gas, and we really leaned into that dispersed workforce. And as we see today, about 40% of our workforce is what we call dispersed. That means they don't live within 50 miles of an office location.
And 40% of a workforce of how many?
250.
Okay.
So there is, in coming with that workforce, we now need to understand from a market perspective, we have teams in different cities, in NorCal, in Denver, in upstate New York, and all these different places, Atlanta, Texas, Florida. So now we have individuals there. How do we create pathways for them to be successful in their career? What do we do in regard to market strategies for growth, right? So that's one of the things that we're looking at and understanding what that means. And then inorganic growth is also something that we need to look at. We're not a firm that's looking to grow for growth's sake. I always joke with the partners that if we wanted, to double in revenues, I could probably get it done in 12 months' time. We'd make less money and be a lot less happy. So it's not just about running up the chart. It's understanding, what do we need? What's our strategy around it? And with all the private equity money coming into the market, our ability to actually be competitive in that is challenged, right? And We're not going to be the firm that's going to show up with the biggest check at the front end of a deal, but we're going to be the firm with the right culture for the right, a merger candidate to join. And so that takes a little different process to stay independent, right?
Right.
And then when we look at, the people side of things, I think some of it ties into some of the two words that you had about leadership and succession, continuous workforce planning, assessing talent gaps. We talked about our dispersed workforce, how to create leaders beyond, our headquarters and create career opportunities in there. Outsourcing, how do we continue to deploy outsourcing into our strategy? So that's kind of some of the elements in the people side of it. And then finally, from the firm side of it is, continue evolve technology strategy, nothing new. We just got to keep going on that. But the second thing is operational. We use the term operational excellence, which I don't know if that's really a practical term. I don't think anyone's excellent at operating. But really just continuing to be innovative and getting that baseline done as we as a firm and we as an industry continue to have resource constraints. We need to keep innovating on processes to make things more efficient, right? Get the right people to do. And how do we do that without, the capital that some of these larger firms have to really make that investment? And that's a challenge. It's an opportunity. And I think that's actually where some firms have actually kind of raised the white flag and saying, I'm not going to try to solve this piece of it.
Sure.
So that's an area that we look through. But I think finally, the last thing that we look at, and it kind of covers all, is continuing to push the concept of transparent dialogue and feedback. We really try to operate with great candor here at the firm. And that's what's kept our alignment amongst everyone. And so really in a dispersed work environment, sometimes it's harder to maintain that. And so keeping that as kind of one of our center points for how we move forward. So I can go on for the next half an hour and talk through, but those are kind of our big flags, if you will, in regard to how we think what are the big rocks that we need to deal with in regard to staying independent into the future.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they all kind of encompass a lot of, different areas that we talk about on the next 7, if you will, right? And so reinvesting into the firm, having a
Yep.
growth strategy, right? Understanding what governance is looking like and the different types of roles that we need along the way, leadership development, especially in a 40% dispersed work environment, where are we able to kind of capitalize on that? I know
Yep.
that's one of the toughest challenges I see firms handling right now, which are requiring people to get back in the office 1, 2, 3 days a week, because it still hasn't been an obstacle that we can overcome. And I think in your market, trying to get certain people in the office, 1 day a week is great and needed. But have you guys, kind of figured out any good models on the L&D side or some of the challenges when it comes to that dispersed, practice right now to maintain that L&D culture, if you will?
Yeah, no, it's a challenge. By the way, one of our objectives, one of our rocks in our people hub is, I actually have it on the screen, our upskilling strategy, technical skills operating absent the apprentice model,
Yeah.
right? That's one of the things that we
Yeah.
need to figure out. We don't have it figured out.
Yeah.
And no one I talk to has it figured out. I think.
If you have the silver bullet, I'm sure somebody would
Yeah.
buy it.
But it really needs to be thought through and in a really intentional way. And I think if the profession's honest with itself over the last 3 years, as we did disperse as a profession, I think that the training might have been the biggest loss in all of the dynamics. So we had revenue growth and client growth and service growth and all this growth, but I actually think the training and the upskilling went down because no one knew how to do it. And then, we did it online. And, how many online courses have you been to where no one's camera's on? Everyone's checking their email or
Right.
working on a file or whatever it is. So, and I think we're seeing that not only internally, but when we get candidates coming across who, come from other firms that we know historically have had great training programs, and these individuals, there's a skills deficit in there.
Yeah. When you talked a little bit about inorganic growth and some of the consolidation happening in the profession, have you guys used M&A as part of that mechanism, for kind of achieving that independence and growth culture, or is that something that you guys are still kind of navigating? You talked a little bit about your clients becoming more dynamic, needing more services. Has that been part of the strategy as well? It's top of mind.
Yeah, no, for certain. Is it something we've been doing and something we still need to develop? I think the answer is both. Yes. We have a history of acquisitions here in the firm, but we're not an acquisition machine. Every acquisition, merger, whatever term you want to use, is really, when it's a firm, it's been because there's been a right culture fit.
Yeah.
I know it's easy to say, but it is true. It's, it's making sure that we're going to be aligned on our vision and, people first and those types of conversations. So we do have a history of them. We did merge in a firm up in San Jose 2 years ago. And so, that's been successful, and we're still working through figuring out like what the next stage is on that.
Yeah.
Um, and we've had a lot of success with actual lateral hires. Our advisory practice, whether it's client accounting services, forensics, and lit support, we brought in, individuals as lateral hires that, have a skill set, cultural fit, and a book of business, or the ability to grow a book of business. And there's others that we brought in that way. So it's both. But that being said, I think in the new world that we're into, with all the consolidation going on, the people who have a lot of experience in acquisitions, and I won't name any firms, but there's a whole bunch of them in the top 20. You see certain deals going to more regular firms. It's not like the other firms aren't pursuing deals. So it's just become much more competitive
Right.
in that process. And, there are some top 20 firms that have had some acquisitions in the last year or two that were surprising to me, in the sense that they were of a size that I was like, that should be something I'm looking at, not
Right.
like, what a multi-$100 million firm is looking at. So they're having to come down market because the opportunities are becoming more competitive.
CBiz is covered by William Blair, and William Blair did a webinar for us yesterday, and they were just talking a little bit about, their target firm right now is $10 to $20 million. They obviously, if you look at all their deals they've done, yeah, they've got, some and some other larger ones and along the way, but yeah, I mean, they're definitely looking. And then with private equity, you have your platform firms, Baker Tilly, obviously now the latest, but now you have a lot of the roll-ups happening, and they're targeting $5 to $20 million firms. So
Yeah, exactly.
no longer an
In
isolated.
LA, there's been, in the last couple of years, Ide Bailey, Citron Cooperman, Armanino, others have, rolled up, and $3, $4, $5 million firms,
Yep.
which and anyone that does an acquisition or advises a client, it takes just as much effort to do a $5 million acquisition as it does to do a $25 million acquisition, relatively. So yeah, it's just interesting. So that changes our opportunities in the
Sure.
marketplace.
Yeah, and I also think you have some value proposition that might be a little bit different than a lot of other firms when it comes to having what you would say remaining fiercely independent strategy. I love that term, RFI, remaining fiercely independent.
Yeah.
How did that kind of originate? Any story behind that, or it was just like, listen, we're all aligned. Let's do this.
We're all aligned. I think one evening at a partner retreat, the F in RFI might have been a little more of a colorful word, but yeah, no, that was it. Like, hey, we want to do this, and we were passionate about doing it. So,
Yeah.
remaining independent, like that's not all that inspiring, right? But to get really that kind of, fiercely, or whatever other colorful word you could put in there, it really drives the passion that we have around it. And by the way, it attracts people, right? People, because we've come across many people who are like, what are your plans? I know the kind of firm you are. What are your plans? And, our plans
You're kind
are,
of in that sweet spot right now. It's a fair question to ask, and understanding, kind of along the way what that, entails. So, kind of driving the ship forward, having some experience, a lot of bumps, along the way, pandemic, et cetera. Thinking about, 2027, what are some of the challenges that that still have to kind of be addressed or managed? Especially, I know AI is top of mind, and how is a firm your size, staying competitive by reinvesting in the technology and making sure we're doing the things that we need to serve our clients.
right. No, I mean, look, you mentioned AI, and I have some people are all freaked out about it, and I'm like, all right, so look, we're not going to create Chat GHJ. It just ain't we don't have the resources. Let the big four create their own. Right? I said, but that being said, there's lots of bits and pieces of technology that we can deploy every day that help this, and like. There's Read AI that's becoming more common, right? That's an AI tool that enables us to take better minutes on meetings. Now there's some HR and other complexities in there, but you can figure out, but like that's available. If anyone uses Box is rolling out a lot of AI tools within their Box environment, which then will enable us to kind of have our own data set for some of these things. So I guess my point is, as AI becomes commercialized, just like, if you think back to document management systems, um, when we first had them in the profession, they were clunky. They were like a file room, but put into a digital universe. And what ended up happening was your Dropbox or your Box or all these more commercialized solutions just ended up being adopted. I think that's what's going to happen in AI. I think we're going to be able to. We just need to be smart about the bits and pieces that we pick up. So technology will always be a challenge. We as a firm of our size are never going to be able to make the investment to solve it. So we're going to have to just make sure that we're being innovative and frankly intentional, to go back to that word, about what the marketplace has to offer for us and how we can deploy it in our offerings. Look, I've been doing this for a long time, and talent has, and always will be the issue.
Yeah.
And whether it's the availability of talent, we talked about upskilling, right, and training challenges. I think those will continue to be an issue. I think that, frankly, the undergrad, the educational program in the United States is not in a spot that it actually creates the skills needed to be a CPA in a day-to-day world, which is another dynamic which is hard to fix. So talent is the issue, is the main issue. And I don't think it ever will not be. We are in the people business.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a critical point. Are you guys offshoring a little bit now, or is that part of the strategy? A little bit.
We have about 10 folks that are offshored at the moment. Not ours. We've actually kind of spread through the Philippines and India to try to understand what our best options are. We've had a really good relationship. We're part of HLB. We had a good relationship with an HLB affiliate in India. That's been a really good solution for us. But it is part of that. Talent outsourcing is part of what we're looking at. And it's not just outsourcing audit and tax and advisory work. It's like, what can we do with our internal finance function, internal marketing function? Like, I think we really need to push the envelope on scalability of those, what we call firm services, I guess the legacy term, administrative costs.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more. I've heard a lot of stories. I mean, my wife's a CPA. When you took 150 credit hours, didn't matter what type of content or classes you took in many capacities, ways, shapes, or forms, right? So no question, that's a big topic, the 150 hours.
Yeah, I'll stay away from that. I'll stay away from that one.
No, but I think the other one is starting salaries, and how are we taking that into account when you're looking at the skill sets we are capturing, and those skill sets can be put into other industries that who's going to be the first firm paying $100,000, $85,000, right? And just thinking about the critical nature of the value that we're providing.
No, agreed. And when you talk about starting salaries, it's interesting. If you look at the salary growth, and I'll just say from maybe 5 years experience and up over the last 4 or 5 years, it's been tremendous, all up and down. But that starting salary it certainly hasn't moved in lockstep with the rest of the people in the firm. And, and when you're in a big city, and here in LA, we're trying to recruit people locally. You got the studios, you got the Netflix, and Google and Apple, and they're all down here too. So it really creates a challenging workforce when not only I don't know, the sexiness, if that's the right word, of working for a Snapchat, we're never going to compete with that. But then when the economics come from it, we're really not going to compete with it. So it's a challenge.
Somebody's got to bring sexy back. I agree. Tom, this has been a real pleasure, and I've enjoyed it. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but again, really great learning about GHJ, your path, what the firm's path is going forward, and just this whole idea that we've really charted out something to do well when remaining fiercely independent going forward. Any last thoughts?
No, I appreciate what Winding River's done for keeping a group of professionals together and just driving the thought leadership on it. Continues to be needed in the profession. I do find the CPA profession is a very collaborative and open book with each other as we all work together. And I appreciate your guys' efforts in keeping that going. And I'm happy to chat with anyone to learn about the profession myself, and also maybe my own experience to help others. So I put that out there to anyone listening.
No questions asked, Tom. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I appreciate you joining us.
Take care.